We're running out of time, Anubarak. How far are we from the exit?
Not far. We have entered the Upper Kingdom. The exit should lead us to the base of the glacier itself. However, there are still hidden traps and pitfalls to account for.
Take cover! Arthas! The entire passage collapsed. There's no time to dig through this. I'll have to move quickly and find my own way out. Hopefully Anubarak and the others survived. Speak, fool. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. I'll make sure you suffer. This is more like it. Ah, at last. I'll be singed if I get too close to those flames. This is more like it. Finally. Ah, at last. Faithless coward. This is more like it. Finally. I'll need this gold for when I reach the glacier. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. More than the Rubian's blasted mechanisms. I'll have to time this perfectly. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Our hero has been killed. We're running out of time, Anubarak. How far are we from the exit?
Not far. We have entered the Upper Kingdom.
Finally. You will know endless torment. This is more like it. I'll be singed if I get too close to those flames. Finally. This is more like it. Ah, at last. I'll need this gold for when I reach the glacier. Ah, at last. More of the Nerubian's blasted mechanisms. I'll have to time this perfectly. This is more like it. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Our hero has been killed. Frostmourne hungers. I'll be singed if I get too close to those flames. Frostmourne hungers. This is more. I'll need this gold for when I reach the glacier. This is more like it. More of the Nerubian's blasted mechanisms. I'll have to time this perfectly. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Another quake? Frostmourne hungers. I'll make sure you suffer. Finally. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Now. You will end this torment. Finally. I'll make sure you suffer. For the Lich King. I'll make sure you suffer. Face coward. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. You will know endless torment. This is more like it. Finally. Ah, at last. For the Lich King. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Your pain shall be legendary. Now, Frostmourne. Faithless coward. Finally. I'll make sure you suffer. At last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Finally. This is more like it. Ah, at last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Faithless coward. This is more like it. Now, Frostmourne. Ah, at last. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. I'll make sure you suffer. Your pain shall be legendary. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. I must find a way across this strange obstacle. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Finally. Ah, at last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Ah, at last. For the Lich King. You will know endless torment. Finally. This is more like it. Faithless coward. Ah, at last. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. For the Lich King. I'll make sure you suffer. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Ah, at last. Finally. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Anubarak, you made it.
I see now why the Lich King chose you as his champion, Death Knight. Few men could have survived this labyrinth alone.
This is more like it. What is it?
Another earthquake. We must hurry, Death Knight.
Frostmourne hungers. Something's breaking through. Defensive positions! Your pain shall be legendary. This is more like it.
Kinky.
Frostmourne hungers. No one orders me around. This is more like it. Finally. For the Lich King. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. You will know endless torment.
By
Frostmourne hungers. Speak, fool. Ah, at last.
We're running out of time. We must find the exit. They're blocking the way to the exit. We'll have to fight our way through them to reach it.
Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. What is it now?
I'll see to it. I'll conceal the living and the dead.
Our hero has been killed.
Frostmourne hungers. I'll make sure you suffer. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. Now, Frostborn. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. This is more like it. At last. Finally. At last. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
Our hero has been killed.
This is more like it. Faithless coward. At last. I'll make you suffer. Faithless coward. For the Lich King. Finally. This is more like it. You will know endless torment. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. For the Lich King. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. I must find a way across this strange obstacle. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Anubarak, you made it.
I see now why the Lich King chose you as his champion, Death Knight. Few men could have survived this labyrinth alone. Speak.
Speak, fool.
Another earthquake. We must hurry, Death Knight.
For the Lich King. Now, Frostborn. This is more like it. At last. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. Finally. Something's breaking through. Defensive positions! last. This is more like
By their rube.
Tread lightly. Speak, fool. I'll make sure you suffer. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. What is it now? Faithless coward. Ah, at last. Finally. I'll make sure you suffer. Ah, at last. Speak, fool.
We're running out of time. We must find the exit.
What is it now? Finally. This is more like it.
They're blocking the way to the exit. We'll have to fight our way through them to reach it. I'll see to it.
Tread lightly. I'll make sure you suffer. What is it? Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Ah, at last.
Now quickly, head through that door. The exit to the surface lies just beyond.
It'll be good to see the sun again.
Remember, Illidan and the true battle still await us in the world above. Hopefully our trek through the Dark Earth bought us the precious time we needed.